Have you ever wondered why Islam places the duty of providing upon men in a world where gender roles are constantly being redefined? This question often feels heavy, even controversial, but what if the truth is not about power, but about purpose? What if this divine assignment was never meant to limit men, but to elevate them? When Islam commands men to provide, it isn't merely talking about money, it's talking about responsibility, trust, and leadership. A man's role as a provider is not an economic title, it's a spiritual mission. Allah, in His wisdom, assigned this role to men not because women are less capable, but because the burden of responsibility refines the soul. A true provider doesn't give because he's superior, he gives because he's accountable. The Quran says, men are protectors and maintainers of women because Allah has given one more strength than the other, and because they support them from their means. This verse is often misunderstood, yet it reveals a deep moral truth that strength in Islam is defined by service, not dominance. When a man provides for his family, he mirrors divine mercy. He becomes a source of safety, stability, and sustenance. His role is to carry, not to control. His provision is an act of love, a reflection of Allah's own care for His creation. Providing in Islam is not about ownership, it's about guardianship. When a man earns, protects, and supports, he is not doing it to gain authority, but to fulfill trust. Every coin he spends on his family, every effort he makes to ensure their well-being is recorded as a form of worship. The Prophet A said that even the morsel of food a man feeds his wife is charity. Think about that. The simple act of providing dinner can become an act that earns eternal reward. Islam transforms the everyday responsibility of a man into something sacred, something that builds not only homes but hearts. The role of the provider is not glamorous in worldly terms. It often involves sacrifice, fatigue, and unseen effort, but in the eyes of Allah, it is noble beyond measure. A man who fulfills this duty with sincerity becomes a pillar of his community and a mirror of divine compassion. In today's world, the concept of men providing is often mocked or misunderstood. Many see it as outdated or oppressive. But Islam's model is not based on competition between genders, it's based on cooperation. Men are commanded to provide, not because women are incapable, because Allah designed a balance of duties that preserves dignity on both sides. The woman's right to be provided for allows her the freedom to nurture, to grow, to choose her path without the crushing burden of survival. The man's duty to provide gives him purpose, discipline, and accountability. It forces him to rise beyond selfishness and embrace service. In this divine system, both roles complete each other. A man's financial responsibility is not a privilege, it's pressure, but it's holy pressure. It pushes him to be consistent, strong, and protective. Islam doesn't chain men to their wallets, it ties them to their hearts. When a man provides, it is not only his family that benefits, it is his soul that expands. The act of earning through honest means, of striving to fulfill needs without greed or exploitation, builds a connection between the man and his creator. It teaches humility because no matter how hard he works, provision ultimately comes from Allah. Every paycheck becomes a reminder of divine sustenance. Every meal he places before his family becomes a testimony of gratitude. The man who provides in the way Islam teaches doesn't just build a house. He builds a sanctuary. He doesn't just earn money, he earns blessings. When a man shoulders his responsibility, the world around him becomes more stable, more compassionate, and more aligned with divine justice. He becomes not only a provider of things, but a provider of peace. However, this role also demands gentleness and fairness. The Quran teaches that provision without mercy is tyranny, and leadership without compassion is failure. A true provider does not use his duty as a weapon, he uses it as a shield. His strength protects, it does not suppress. His wealth serves, it does not enslave. In a home built on Islamic principles, provision is not transactional, it is relational. The man provides, the woman supports, and both rise together toward Allah. When both understand this sacred design, their home becomes an act of worship. The man finds honor in responsibility, and the woman finds comfort in being cherished. Together, they embody balance, the very essence of Islam. Ultimately, the duty to provide is not a worldly burden, but a divine opportunity. It shapes men into givers, not takers, into protectors, not oppressors. Every struggle, every sleepless night, every sacrifice made in the name of family becomes a deposit in the eternal account of good deeds. Islam dignifies the provider by making his labor a form of worship and his love a form of charity. When a man understands this, he no longer works for status or wealth. He works for Jannah. The role of the provider is not about proving power, it's about proving love. It's about standing as a reflection of Allah's mercy in the lives of those entrusted to him. And in fulfilling this sacred duty with sincerity, a man doesn't just provide for his family, he provides light for his own soul, a legacy that endures long after the wealth fades away. When we reflect deeply on why men are commanded to provide in Islam, we uncover a divine philosophy far greater than social structures or financial responsibility. It is a spiritual discipline that molds the heart, purifies the ego, and cultivates compassion. The Quran establishes that men are the protectors and maintainers of women, not as a statement of superiority, but as an assignment of service and accountability. To provide means to take on the sacred role of care, to ensure the well-being of those entrusted to one's protection, and to shoulder a burden that demands strength of body and purity of heart. A man who provides is not merely offering material sustenance. He is offering emotional safety, consistency, and reassurance. He becomes a reflection of divine mercy through his sacrifices. Each day he steps out to work. He carries a piece of this spiritual mission with him. His sweat becomes his prayer, his patience his faith, his fatigue his offering. In every honest transaction, he builds a connection between the seen and the unseen, between the dunya he must navigate and the akhirah he hopes to attain. Provision, in this sense, becomes worship. The Prophet Ave taught that even a morsel of food a man feeds his family is recorded as charity, meaning that Islam elevates the mundane into the sacred. When a man spends on his family, it is not a loss, it is an investment in his soul. This divine system brings harmony because it is rooted in justice. The woman is given the right to be provided for, freeing her from the pressures of survival so that she can nurture, build, and contribute in ways that complement rather than compete. The man, in return, is tested with responsibility so that he can grow in character and humility. In today's modern world, where equality is often confused with sameness, this concept can feel misunderstood, yet Islam does not strip either gender of dignity. It assigns each a role that fits their natural design. A man's provision is not an act of control but of care. It demands patience, consistency, and selflessness. It challenges him to rise each day, not out of pride, but out of purpose. And when done sincerely, it transforms his life into a form of ongoing charity, his home into a sanctuary of peace, and his heart into a vessel of gratitude. Providing for one's family becomes a dialogue between the servant and the Creator, a conversation of faith that says, I trust you to provide through me. That trust softens him. It makes him understand that everything he earns is not truly his own. It is a trust and a manna, to be distributed with justice and love. A man's role as a provider, therefore, is not a worldly position, but a spiritual station, a chance to mirror divine generosity and to build not just houses of brick and wood, but homes of mercy and light. The world may see his responsibility as a weight, but in truth, it is a ladder to Jannah. For every tear wiped, every meal earned, every sacrifice made without complaint, there is unseen reward. Islam dignifies this effort, sanctifies this struggle, and teaches that in providing for others, a man ultimately provides for his own soul. When we think about why men are asked to provide in Islam, we must understand that this command is not about domination or power. It is about divine responsibility, mercy, and balance. The Quran says, men are the protectors and maintainers of women, which many misunderstand as a statement of hierarchy, when in truth it is a statement of duty. A man's role as a provider is deeply spiritual. It is a form of worship that requires him to give, to serve, and to carry the burdens of others for the sake of Allah. Providing is not just about financial security, it is about emotional stability, about creating a home where peace and compassion can flourish. When a man provides with sincerity, he reflects one of the attributes of Allah, Ar-Razak, the provider. He becomes a means through which Allah's mercy flows into the lives of those he loves. Each coin he earns, every effort he makes, every early morning and late night spent in hard work, all of it becomes part of his ibadah. His struggles to fulfill this divine responsibility teach him humility. Discipline and selflessness, they train his soul to trust that sustenance ultimately comes from Allah alone. He is not the source of provision, but a vessel through which it is delivered. This understanding transforms his work from something worldly to something sacred. It gives meaning to every sacrifice he makes. When a man spends on his family with love and sincerity, he builds not just a household, but a legacy of compassion and trust. His provision becomes a bridge between his effort in this world and his reward in the next. Islam dignifies this role by promising spiritual reward for every act of sincere giving, a reminder that what he offers is never lost but multiplied by the one who sees all. This responsibility also teaches men something profound about strength. True strength in Islam is not the ability to dominate, but the capacity to serve. Providing for one's family is an act of love that demands patience, resilience, and faith. It requires a man to rise above his own desires and think beyond himself. It requires him to carry burdens silently, to protect without boasting, and to give without expecting praise. And when he fulfills this role with sincerity, softens his heart and brings him closer to Allah. In a world that often confuses masculinity with ego, Islam reminds men that their worth lies not in control, but in care. The Prophet A said that the best among men are those who are best to their families, showing that kindness and responsibility are the true measures of manhood. The man who provides is therefore not chained by obligation, but elevated by it. His giving becomes an act of gratitude, a way of saying Alhamdulillah for what he has been trusted with. And for the woman, this divine balance offers protection and peace. Islam does not make her dependent. It gives her the right to be cared for so that she can give from a place of security and love. This harmony between giving and receiving, between strength and softness, between effort and trust is what keeps the spiritual ecosystem of a family alive. When both husband and wife understand their roles as acts of worship rather than social expectations, their home becomes more than just a shelter. It becomes a sanctuary filled with light, mercy, and tranquility. In this balance, every heart finds peace because every role is rooted in divine wisdom. When we reflect on why Islam assigns the responsibility of financial provision to men, we realize it is not about superiority, but about structure, purpose, and divine balance. Every command from Allah carries wisdom that nurtures both the individual and the community. The role of the man as the provider is meant to cultivate within him a sense of duty, compassion, and accountability. It teaches him that life is not just about personal comfort or worldly success, but about serving others and fulfilling a trust. In this way, earning becomes an act of worship. Each step he takes toward earning a halal income, every effort he exerts for his family, and every challenge he endures in the path of provision, all become acts of devotion in the eyes of Allah. When a man spends on his family, it is not a loss. It is an investment in his hereafter. The Prophet A taught that even the morsel of food a man puts into his wife's mouth is an act of charity. This teaches us that in Islam, the mundane can become sacred when done with the right intention. The concept of a man providing is therefore deeply spiritual. It disciplines his soul to be patient, to persevere, and to recognize his complete dependence on Allah. It is not the paycheck that sustains the home, the blessing that Allah places within it. This understanding keeps his heart humble, his work honest, and his faith alive. The wisdom behind this divine design also reflects a deeper emotional balance between men and women. Men, by nature, are created to find fulfillment through responsibility, while women are created to find fulfillment through being nurtured and cared for. When a man provides with love, it allows a woman to give love freely without fear or insecurity. Islam does not see provision as a transaction, but as a partnership in which both give differently but equally. The man gives his protection, his labor, and his strength, while the woman gives her care, her compassion, and her emotional warmth. Together, they build a family rooted in mercy. The beauty of this system is that it uplifts both, not one over the other. When men fulfill their roles with sincerity, it brings peace into their homes and confidence into their hearts. They no longer see provision as a burden, but as a form of service that connects them to Allah. And when women understand this responsibility not as control, but as care, they respond with respect, gratitude, and trust. This mutual respect creates a balance that protects love from fading. It prevents resentment from growing because both understand that their roles are not man-made expectations, but divine assignments meant to nurture the soul. Beyond the physical act of providing lies a spiritual truth. Sustenance is not earned by effort alone, but granted through divine mercy. A man may work tirelessly, but without Allah's barakah, his earnings may bring no peace. Islam teaches that wealth without blessing is an illusion. It may fill the hand, but not the heart. Therefore, when a man works, his first goal is not wealth, but blessing, not status, but sincerity. Providing becomes a daily reminder of his dependence on Allah. Each time he strives to feed his family, he learns tawakkul, trusting that Allah will provide even when the path seems uncertain. This trust strengthens his faith and transforms his challenges into opportunities for growth. Hardships in provision are not signs of failure, but invitations to seek Allah more deeply. In this way, the act of providing becomes a spiritual journey. It refines his character, purifies his intentions, and strengthens his heart. When a man provides with faith, his home becomes a space filled with sakina, peace, and tranquility, because his efforts are tied to the one who never fails. And when a man and woman both understand that their ultimate provider is Allah, their relationship moves beyond dependency on one another and is anchored instead in divine love. They realize that their connection, their harmony, and their sustenance are all reflections of Allah's mercy, an ever-flowing source that never runs dry. When we truly reflect on the divine wisdom behind men being assigned the responsibility to provide in Islam, it is not a matter of control or superiority. One of divine harmony and balance. Every role that Allah has given to His creation is rooted in mercy and designed to preserve stability within the home and society. A man's duty to provide is not about dominance, it is about leadership that comes with humility and sacrifice. Allah created men with a natural inclination toward protection, endurance, and responsibility, qualities that make them fit for the role of being the provider. This responsibility teaches him patience, compassion, and selflessness, molding his heart into one that serves before it demands. When he steps out every day to earn a halal livelihood, it becomes a form of worship, a continuous act of obedience to Allah. Every drop of sweat shed in the path of providing is a testimony of his trust in Allah's promise of sustenance. The moment he earns with sincerity and spends with love, his provision becomes a bridge between the material and the spiritual, reminding him that the true provider is not his job nor his strength, but Allah Himself. This realization brings humility as he understands that his efforts are nothing without divine blessing and his wealth is empty without barakah. The beauty of this divine structure is that it not only fulfills the physical needs of a family, but also nourishes the emotional and spiritual dimensions of relationships. Men and women are designed by Allah with different emotional natures, yet they complement one another perfectly when they live according to divine guidance. When a man fulfills his responsibility with sincerity, he provides not just financial support, but emotional security. His wife feels protected, valued, and honored because she knows that he is striving not out of ego, but out of faith. This allows her to nurture, to love, and to care without fear or burden. Islam teaches that the family is a sanctuary, and the man's role as the provider is a pillar that upholds this sanctuary. It is a reminder that in the divine order, love and respect are interdependent. When a man gives love through provision, the woman returns that love with respect, and both souls find peace in fulfilling what Allah has decreed. The Quran beautifully captures this equilibrium when it describes men and women as garments for one another, each providing comfort, protection, and dignity to the other. Provision, in the Islamic sense, goes far beyond material sustenance. It is about nurturing the heart, providing emotional safety, and ensuring spiritual stability within the home. A man who provides with a heart filled with gratitude and reliance on Allah brings barakah not only into his income, but into every corner of his family life. His home becomes a place of contentment because he earns with honesty, gives with sincerity, and lives with purpose. He understands that his work is not just about meeting financial goals, but about earning Allah's pleasure. The Prophet A said that even the morsel of food a man places in his wife's mouth is an act of charity, showing us that in Islam, every small act of care holds eternal significance. This transforms the idea of provision from a worldly duty to a spiritual opportunity. It teaches men that their effort to provide is a reflection of their faith, a way of showing gratitude for the blessings Allah has entrusted them with. When this understanding settles in the heart, a man no longer feels burdened by responsibility. Instead, he feels honored to serve as a means through which Allah provides for others. Ultimately, the command for men to provide is a divine reminder that strength in Islam is not measured by power, but by service. True leadership is rooted in compassion, not control. The man who fulfills his role sincerely is not just earning for his family, he is earning nearness to Allah. And when he provides with love and humility, he transforms his worldly efforts into acts of worship that echo in eternity. At the same time, this responsibility teaches him empathy for others. He learns to value every blessing, to understand the struggles of those who have less, and to remain grateful regardless of circumstances. His heart becomes anchored in tawakkul, trusting that his provision will always come from the one who never fails his servants. And when both the husband and wife understand that Allah is the true provider, their relationship becomes one of harmony, gratitude, and mutual support. Their love deepens because it is built not on worldly convenience, but on faith, sacrifice, and divine purpose. Together, they build a home where peace flows naturally because every action, every effort, and every sacrifice is tied to the remembrance of Allah, the ultimate sustainer of all hearts and homes.